Hello everyone and welcome. Today we are going to take a break from the Volvo content because my daily needs some attention. As you all know, my Audi A6 Allroad has done over 400,000 kilometers, which means that, unsurprisingly, stuff breaks. Being manufactured by the Volkswagen Audi group, you can imagine what happens when the car senses not everything is functioning as it's supposed to. So, in order to save my sanity, today's episode will be about fixing the issues at hand.
All my friends, yellow rider.
Before I start working on the car, I think I'm going to give you guys a quick overview of all the check lights that it's giving me and what is the cause of them, and then we can obviously start fixing them. So if I turn on the ignition. So first of all, we have a check engine light, which I've had for quite some time, actually for as long as I've had the car, and that is caused by the swirl flaps. There is an issue with carbon deposits on the swirl flaps themselves, which inhibits them from moving properly, so that's why it's giving a code. To fix this, I have bought a new set of swirl flaps accompanied with some new motors, so that will hopefully fix that problem. Then there is also a light for the fuel gauge, because it reads empty. The car thinks that there is no fuel in the tank, but actually there is an issue with the fuel sending unit. It always tells me that there is no fuel in the car, and that is why it's giving that light. There is also an issue with the window washer fluid that needs to be topped up. That is quite an easy fix. And then lastly, there is a light for the brake pads, which is this light. And that is actually for the brake pads in the rear that are worn. And to fix this, I have bought new brake pads, but I'm also going to throw on some new discs, so that we have new brakes in the rear. And there is also an additional issue, but that can only be seen when the car is started, so I'll just quickly do that. There should be a light for the headlights. Yeah, there it is. This is caused by my left headlight that has a problem with the height adjustment. Because my car is fitted with factory air suspension, it obviously can move up and down, but that means that the headlights need to move up and down as well when the height is adjusted. And I think one of the motors is either broken or has a bad connection issue, so we'll have to look into that as well to fix that. And hopefully when all of that is done, my car should stop beeping at me every time I get into it, which would be really nice for a change. The most urgent problem that needs fixing are the brakes, so we are starting there. The pads are pretty worn, but not as bad as I initially thought, but I'm changing them anyway. In order to make the new thicker pads fit over the disc, I have disconnected the electric parking brake so that I can push back the piston with a wind back tool. And just like that, the rear brakes are installed. Okay everyone, so now that the brakes are fixed, the next issue we are going to tackle is the fuel gauge. And I am pretty confident that the issue for the fuel gauge is located here in the back seat, because I've had it happen that I would take somebody with me and then suddenly the fuel gauge would stop working. So I think there is a bad connection with the fuel sending unit, and those are located here and here under the rear seat. So we are going to take it off and see if we can spot some issues. Hello. The electrical connector you see here supplies power to the fuel pump and also connects to the fuel sender unit. I have read that a common issue is that these connectors make a bad connection at the three small wires in the middle, which are the ones for the fuel gauge. The connector itself seems to be in excellent condition and the wires show no signs of breakage. So together with Thibaut, I'm deepening the 3 central wires to directly connect them to the pins of the fuel sender. That way we can rule out that the connector prevents a solid connection. Still nothing, so the next thing we are checking is to see if the gauge on the dashboard still works. We played around with some resistors and soon enough we got a signal. That means that our issue is located inside of the fuel tank. Okay, so getting rid of the fuel level issue wasn't really a big success, but at least now we know what the issue is. I know that I will have to take the fuel pump assembly out of the fuel tank, but in order to do that I will need to wait until the fuel level is a little bit lower, because I have read that the fuel tank needs to be about at 1/4 of the maximum capacity, because otherwise a lot of diesel will come out once you unscrew the cap that is on top of the fuel tank. But I will do that at a later point, maybe even in this video if it stretches out long enough. But for now we are going to do something easy so that we can at least get something done, and that is to give the car a quick oil change. Normally, to do an oil change, the skid plate does not have to be removed, but because we are also going to do some other stuff on the car, I am going to remove it. So that was pretty easy, and to finalize a bit of maintenance, I'm also going to replace the diesel filter. But once that is done, we're going to do some more complicated stuff. I have taken apart this car before, and when I did, I noticed that the harmonic balancer was in oh, hello! Fuck. Okay, so I guess the spring of my hood just decided that it didn't want to work anymore. God damn it. Okay, so that is temporarily fixed. So I was saying that that a few months ago I took apart the whole front end of the car because I had an issue with an oil spillage right about here on the engine, and I had to get access to the accessory belt to clean everything up. And that is when I noticed that the harmonic balancer that sits right about here was in really bad condition, so that meant I needed to replace it, but I didn't have the money back then, but I do now. So we are going to replace that, and then there were also some other pulleys that were in questionable condition, so those are going to get replaced as well. And then I also got a water pump that also sits on the belt. I figured I might as well do it right now, so that all of this doesn't need to come out again, because it is a pain in the ass to access the belt itself. As you can see, Audi didn't leave a lot of room to access it. I'll get my light out so you guys can see it. It's even a pain just to film it. But right over there, there is the belt. I don't know if you can see it like that. I don't know if it's very clear. Under the dipstick, there is the belt running, and it is really hard to reach it. I can't even fit my hand in this space. So we are going to start with taking some of this stuff off the car, and hopefully we can access it without having to take the radiator and stuff off as well. But before I forget, I'm quickly going to replace the fuel filter, which didn't really go well. The little plastic cap thingy on top of the fuel filter snapped off clean, so I guess I won't be able to start the car anytime soon. I already put the new filter in place, but to finish the installation I'll have to wait until the parts store reopens. I'm a bit stressed out that this happened, but hopefully I can get rid of some frustration by concentrating on taking apart the front end. After taking off the headlights, we took a gander inside the one that is drawing the dynamic range code, and we found a small wire that broke. We'll fix that later by soldering it back together. Draining the coolant allowed me to disconnect some of the coolant hoses, which made it possible to move this back as far as it can go without having to remove the cooler for the power steering lines and some other crap like the cooler for the transmission, which is down here. So now we have enough access to get to the water pump, which is located here, and then the harmonic balancer is here on the crankshaft. And we're also going to replace this pulley and this pulley right here. It definitely still is a tricky job, but I hope with the room that we have created, it is enough to get everything off the car. Ta-da! Yes. Whew. Here is a good example of how you can spot if the bearing in the rollers is bad. The bad ones keep rolling and make a lot of noise, while the good ones stop quickly and are silent. Additional to the water pump, I'm also going to replace a thermostat, which sits behind this plastic piece.
Hola. 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 Ay, ay, ay.
Before we go ahead and install the water pump and the thermostat again, I need to talk to you about the bolts that are holding it in. They are made from aluminium and they are one-time use only, so they can't be reused. I have done that in the past. I have reused them on something and I've had it happen that they would just break off really easily. So I've learned my lesson and I'm not going to reuse these aluminium bolts, and instead I have purchased a set of steel ones of the same length and the same thread pitch, and they can be used without any worries. The only thing you need to make sure of is to use a different torque spec to tighten these. Before installing the pump again, I cleaned up the mounting surface to make sure that everything can get properly sealed. Then, before installing the pulleys and the belt again, I'm giving the block a quick clean now that I can still access everything. The bolts for the harmonic balancer are getting a dab of thread locker before they are screwed in. After we fitted a new belt and put new coolant on the system, Thibaut is fixing the broken wire in the passenger headlight so that the whole front end is ready to go back together. After the front bumper got installed, I got a hold of the last piece of the puzzle. With the new plastic thingy installed on the diesel filter, the car is ready for a test drive. Everything seems fine, but there still is a problem that needs fixing. I have always felt like this car is a little sluggish at high RPM. That is why a few episodes ago I did a boost leak test and we noticed that it was leaking at the intake manifolds. So that is the next and last issue we are going to fix once I make it back home. Not only will we fix the boost issue, we will also fix the reason why the car throws a check engine light. Strangely, it is not throwing a code due to lack of boost pressure, but rather because the swirl flaps in the intake cannot achieve their full range of motion. The purpose of these flaps is to create turbulence in the air going into the engine at low RPM. This to enhance the quality of the air-fuel mixture. The ones on my car have a lot of play on them and they are slightly blocked due to fouling caused by EGR. Because I want to prevent that at some point one of the flaps breaks off and gets sucked into the engine, we're installing a complete set of intake manifolds fitted with new swirl flaps and their motors. With the manifolds removed, it is the perfect time to tackle another issue my engine has been having. Right here next to the EGR cooler sits a bypass valve that is leaking exhaust gas and it causes a really bad smell.
Probeer maar te starten.
So while we have some room, we're going to take out the whole EGR assembly in order to change the leaky valve. It was a tough battle, but after a couple of hours, Thibaut managed to free up the EGR bastard.
Ja, wallen.
With a gaping hole in my engine, I am cleaning up the mess in the V of the engine while Thibaut is swapping the valves. With the EGR stuff back in the car, the new manifolds can be installed as well. And with the whole intake installed again, let's go for a drive to see if our hard labor has paid off. Okay, so while the car is warming up, I'll give you guys a quick update on the check light situation. So there are still two lights that appear on my dashboard. The first of them is the fuel level light. As I told you guys, I have to wait for the fuel level to drop a little bit in the tank so that I can take out the fuel pump assembly, but that will take me a couple of days before I can do that. So I will take a look at the wiring inside of the tank a little bit later. And then a second light that I'm getting is the light for the brake pads. For some reason the car still thinks that my brake pads are worn, but the ones in the rear are new. And I have checked the ones in the front and they still have plenty of meat on them, so that is not the issue either. What I might check is the sensors for the front pads. Maybe those are the issue, but I haven't really looked into it. But it shouldn't be too hard of a fix. But we did get rid of some of the lights. The first of which, and the one I am most happy about, is the check engine light. That is completely gone, which is awesome news. Then I also got rid of the window washer problem. That's just because it was empty. And then the dynamic range light for the motors in my front headlights also got fixed with the little wire that we soldered together. So all things considered, I think we made a lot of improvements on the check engine light department. I was kind of hoping to fix all of them, but yeah, that is nearly impossible with these type of cars. But there is a positive note to end on, and that is the fact that the car feels a lot faster than it did before. Fixing the boost leak has improved the throttle response massively. The car comes on boost a lot sooner than it did before, and at high RPM the torque doesn't flatten off as much as it did before. If I find a good spot, I will do a quick pull for you guys. For now, this is probably going to be the only episode on this car. I know a lot of you are probably only interested in the old cars anyway, but I did want to make a video about this because this has been a lot of work and I hope that some of you enjoyed watching it. The next few episodes will be about the Volvo again. We still have some work to do and we still have to take it for its first drive. And then for the E28 I've also bought a new exhaust, so that will be a nice video as well. That is everything I've got for you today. Thank you for watching and until next time.